This is a story that's centered around June 4th, 1982. That's a real important day for me, and it's a fool's errand, and trying to find true love, I guess, is the ultimate fool's errand. And so just a wee back further than that, I went to college in upstate New York and met a young lady there, and she graduated and became a vice president of Citibank, and we sort of got engaged, and well, sort of. She would say, come to New York and I'll marry you, and I would say, come to Hawaii and I'd marry you. For I went to Hawaii for graduate school, and everything was sort of going well, and summer of '82 came along, and I was a rugby player, and I played for the state of Hawaii, and in the summertime we would tour the United States, and we were in a tournament, the Western Nationals in Denver, Colorado, and we were fortunate enough to make the finals, and so my position in rugby is number 3, a tight head prop. For those of you who aren't familiar with rugby, that's sort of like a defensive tackle in American football, and we were playing the Denver Barbarians for the national championship. And so, unfortunately for me, I was playing against number 1, and number 1 is the loose head prop, and he also in his spare time happened to be the United States Eagle loose head prop. So he was bigger than I was, faster than I was, meaner than I was, and better than I was. And so about 65 minutes into an 80-minute game had passed, and it's a pretty tight match, and I'm holding my own, well, maybe not, but doing okay. And he turned me into a pretzel and broke every single rib off of my sternum. Sort of painful. And this was June 3rd, 1982. So June 3rd, one day before. So turning chicken shit into chicken salad. My sister lived in El Paso, Texas, which is just about this much on the map, south of Denver. And she was a manager of a rock and roll radio station, and they started on June 4th. So every June 4th in the town of El Paso, they would rent out Ascarate Park. Now, Ascarate Park is a wee little amusement park, but, they would rent out the entire park for the evening. So I thought, June 3rd, I got my Tylenol 3s, I got my other painkillers, and so we figured we would hustle down to El Paso. And I get to El Paso, and there's a limousine waiting for me. And in the limousine is all the champagne you can drink and all the party favors that you can ingest or whatever. So I get to Ascarate Park, and the party's already started. And, there's not a lot you can do with, 6 broken ribs and copious amount of painkillers. So I was sort of pretty mellow. And visiting my sister is always a really good time because being in a rock and roll radio station, that's a lot of fun. And she would set me up with the disc jockeys. Unfortunately, I found out that 2 years ago's setup was Mary, and 1 year ago setup was Stacy. But now Mary and Stacy were lovers, and they lived together. So that weekend wasn't shaping up to be that much fun. But the staff is sort of hanging out on a picnic table, and they're coming towards us. Again, I'm in the sort of altered states. Is a brown-haired, brown-eyed raven beauty walking towards me with her bow in his, next to her. Well, the bow worked for my sister, and he's this tall, and I am this tall, and being on drugs, I'm this tall. So I did not hesitate to ask him if he mind if I asked his date out on the rides. And what could he say? And before he even actually said anything, I took her hand and we spent the evening on the rides. So the next day we had lunch. 114 degrees, lunch, okay, we flew a kite. Next day we went hot air ballooning. Then we went dancing. So the third day, my sister's moving, and we help her move, and then we drive to the Rio Grande. Now, growing up the Rio Grande, John Wayne taking the horses across the mighty Rio Grande. So 1982, the Rio Grande was about the size of this room. I was there 3 weeks ago. It's a dry bed. But we're on the banks of the Rio Grande, and I said, drop everything, move to Hawaii. And she goes, are you asking me to marry you? And I said, yes. And she said, yes. So, okay. When thunder strikes and lightning bolts happen, that's what you do. So she goes to El Paso to tell her parents. I go to New York City to tell my parents, and also Leslie the banker. And okay, it didn't go as well as we expected. We were both disowned. And Lori came to New York City to meet my parents. That didn't go that well. But she did get to meet Leslie. That didn't go well either, and that's the subject of my next talk. But moving further along, she moved to Hawaii. But in Hawaii, I lived way up in the mountains in Palolo Valley, just below Ka'au Crater, and the rugby team had sort of homesteaded 3 levels. And I somehow ended up at the middle level, and it was a shack built in between 2 koa trees, 2 bedrooms, 2 levels, with rats on the floor during the evening. But rats don't have rabies in Hawaii. My commode was under a banyan tree with the view of the ocean, but it didn't have a shower, it didn't have a phone, didn't have water you can drink, and so she'd asked for a more normal abode, and that was fine. Am I already done? 5 minutes is up? Okay, so we moved into a regular house, and her father, who was really, really great, said, if she asked you to move to Cleveland, would you have gone? And I thought, that's a great question. Cleveland. I never actually asked for the answer to that question because maybe she said yes because it was Hawaii. But 6 months to the day, the day we got married. So the beauty married the beast, and nobody would bet that it would last 6 months. But it's been 35 years, and we're still waiting to see if it lasts.